She never thought silence could hurt more than screaming. But in that barn, silence was the point. What the rancher did to her there wasn't loud, wasn't rushed, and wasn't meant to leave marks anyone would ask about. It was done the way people do things they believe will never matter again. If you're still here, you're officially part of the story now. Subscribe and tell me which country you're watching from. The next twists are unbelievable. Emily Carter woke up on cold dirt with her face turned sideways, cheek pressed into the ground. Her wrists burned before her eyes opened fully. Rope cut deep, not enough to bleed, enough to remind her she wasn't going anywhere. Her lips were split and swollen. Every breath tasted like metal and old hay. The smell in the barn was thick, sweat, dust, and fear that had soaked into the wood over time. She didn't scream. She had learned that lesson already. Screaming didn't bring help. Screaming only wasted strength. So she stayed quiet and let the barn hear her breathing instead. Light slipped through broken boards and thin lines, floating dust moving slow like it was watching her. Her ankles were tied tight. Her hands had gone numb, pins and needles crawling up her arms. She tried to move, and pain answered before her body could. Every breath felt borrowed, like she was using time that didn't belong to her anymore. The barn wasn't violent. That was the part that stayed with her. No shouting, no chaos, just calm, patient, like it knew she wasn't meant to leave. She tried to remember how long she'd been there. Hours maybe, or longer. Time didn't work right when fear stayed too long. Her last clear memory came in pieces, boots on wood, slow steps, not angry, not rushed. A man who wasn't afraid of being remembered. Someone had decided what she was worth, finished the job, and walked away like it was already cleaned up. Outside, the desert did what it always did. It watched and said nothing. Miles away, under a sky baked pale and empty, Jack Miller rode on a land he had bought cheap and quiet. 30 acres of nothing. A house leaning like it had given up. A barn standing crooked but stubborn. Jack didn't come there looking for a new life. He came for silence. The war had taught him how loud silence could be, but he thought he could live with it. He had buried his wife with the money from the last cattle he owned. No crowd, no speeches, just dirt hitting wood and the sound of his own breathing afterward. When he swung down from his horse, the wind cut across the yard sharp enough to feel like a warning. Gravel crunched under his boots. The horse shifted, uneasy, snorting low. That was when Jack felt it, something off. Animals noticed before men did. He walked toward the barn with his hand close to his knife, not from fear, from habit. The doors groaned when he pushed them open, like something inside was exhaling. The smell hit him first. Old rope, sweat, fear that had nowhere left to go. Then he saw her. At first, she looked like a pile of rags shoved into the corner. Not hidden, just placed there. Then he noticed a bare foot. Still, Jack didn't rush. Every step felt louder than it should have. The barn listened. He knelt and touched her shoulder. Her skin felt cold, like she'd been left out all night. Then she twitched, barely, like life was hanging on by a thread and wasn't sure it wanted to stay. Jack's knife flashed once. He cut the rope fast. He'd seen what rope did to skin. He pulled back the blanket. Her wrists were raw, rubbed open. Her face was bruised and sunburned. Dirt smeared into her skin. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her eyes fluttered open for half a second. Green, glassy, terrified. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. Jack poured water from his canteen onto a cloth and pressed it to her forehead. Her breath hitched. "You're safe," he said, not knowing yet if that was true. Then she passed out. Jack stayed there longer than he meant to, listening to her breathing, uneven, fragile, like it might stop if he looked away. The barn went quiet again, but not the same way. This silence asked for something back. He carried her outside and laid her on a cot under the open sky, wrapped her in the only clean blanket he owned. He sat beside her with a shotgun across his knees, not because he was scared, because whoever did this hadn't finished. And men who leave things unfinished usually come back. She drifted in and out through the night, never fully asleep. Every time her body relaxed, pain pulled her back. Her wrists throbbed like they still carried the rope. Her throat burned when she swallowed. The sky above her was wide and dark, stars sharp enough to hurt her eyes. Emily Carter didn't know where she was, only that the barn was behind her now, and that mattered more than answers. Jack Miller stayed close without hovering. He kept the lantern low and the shotgun across his legs. He had learned long ago that panic didn't help anyone. What helped was staying awake when the world wanted you to rest. He watched her chest rise and fall, counted breaths without realizing he was doing it. Sometime before dawn, she flinched hard in her sleep. A sharp breath, fingers curling like they were grabbing at air. Jack didn't touch her. He just leaned forward and spoke quietly, steady. "You're not there," he said. "You're out in the open." He didn't know if she heard him, but her breathing slowed after a while. Morning came slow, like it was unsure it should. Wind moved through dry grass, soft but constant. Emily woke to the smell of bitter coffee and something unfamiliar, clean air. Her body protested when she tried to sit up. Pain answered first, then weakness. She let out a sound before she could stop herself. Jack was already there. He moved like he'd been awake all night, because he had. "Don't rush it," he said. Not gentle, not sharp, honest. He handed her a chipped tin cup with both hands. She took it the same way, like it might spill if either of them moved wrong. The coffee was strong and awful and perfect. She swallowed slowly, heat spreading through her chest. Her shoulders dropped just a little. Jack noticed. He noticed everything that mattered. They didn't talk right away. Silence sat between them, but it wasn't the kind that pressed down. It was the kind broken people shared when words felt too heavy to carry. Emily stared out at the land, wide and empty. It scared her. It also made her feel like she could breathe again. After a while, she whispered, "Emily." Her voice barely worked. Jack nodded once. "Jack." She didn't tell him what happened. Not yet. Her eyes did enough talking. The hollow look of someone who had learned how easy it was for a life to be set aside. Later that day, Jack walked the property. Slow, careful. He found tracks near the creek. 2 sets of boots, recent. Cigarette butts pressed into the dirt that weren't his. Someone had stood there long enough to finish a smoke. That kind of calm didn't come from passing through. When he came back, Emily sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, staring toward the barn like it might move if she looked away. She didn't ask what he found. She already knew the answer wasn't good. Jack checked the rifle, loaded extra shells, set a bell on the gate. Not dramatic, just prepared. Emily watched him do it all, learning something important without saying it out loud. She hadn't been left there by accident. That barn had been chosen. As the sun dropped behind the ridge, Jack stood looking out over land he'd thought would save him. Emily sat a few steps behind him, eyes fixed on the barn doors that no longer felt empty. Somewhere out there, the man who did this believed it was over, believed no one would come looking, believed Emily Carter would fade quietly into dirt and silence. Jack Miller knew better, and as the desert cooled and the bell at the gate waited to be rung, one question settled heavy between them, unspoken but clear. When the man who left her there came back to make sure she stayed quiet, who was going to break first? Morning returned like it wasn't sure it was welcome. The light came thin and pale, slipping across the yard without warmth. Emily Carter woke to the sound of wind brushing dry grass and the soft creak of old wood settling. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then her body reminded her. Pain spoke before memory finished forming. She tried to sit up and stopped halfway, breath catching. Jack Miller was already there, sitting on an overturned crate a few feet away, coffee steaming in a tin cup. He hadn't been watching her sleep. He'd been watching the land. There was a difference. "Easy," he said. Same tone as before. No pity in it. She nodded and stayed still. Talking felt like work she wasn't ready for. When he handed her the cup, her hands shook just enough to notice. The coffee grounded her. Bitter. Real. Something meant to keep a person standing. Jack went about his morning without fuss. Checked the fence. Fed the horse. Fixed a loose board on the porch. He didn't hover. He didn't ask questions that would crack her open too fast. He treated her like someone who still had a place in the world, not a problem that needed managing. That mattered more than she could explain. By noon, she asked if she could stand. Jack looked at her once, then nodded. She took 3 careful steps, then 4. Her legs trembled, but they held. "That's enough," he said. She listened. Later, Jack walked the property again, slower this time. The tracks near the creek still bothered him. Two men, heavy boots. One had shifted his weight back and forth like he'd been waiting. Confidence like that didn't belong to someone passing through. It belonged to a man who thought he still owned something. When Jack returned, Emily sat on the porch, staring out at the land like she was trying to memorize it. He stopped a few feet away. "You remember anything?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "His name was Bill Turner," she said, saying it hurt more than she expected. Her voice cracked but didn't stop. "We were married once. Long time ago." She swallowed. "He left. Took the land. Took everything that mattered. Came back with two men. Said the deed was still his. Said the law would agree." Jack felt his jaw tighten, but said nothing. "He talked like paper made him king," she continued. "Like I was just another thing on a list." She looked up at Jack then. "Tired, steady. They tied me up in that barn like I was something to come back for." She exhaled slowly. "I didn't think anyone would find me." Jack nodded once. Not in pity, in understanding. That night, he set a second shotgun by the door. Sharpened the knife he hadn't used since the war. Tightened the bell on the gate. Emily watched him do it all. She didn't ask why. Fear had taught her how to read preparation. The next few days settled into a strange rhythm. Emily walked a little farther each morning. Helped feed the horse. Carried light buckets from the well. Jack didn't tell her to rest every 5 minutes. He knew better. By the 5th day, she stood without shaking. By the 6th, she laughed once, short and dry, when Jack burned the beans. "Guess we're even," she said. He smiled. Just a little. That evening, Jack found fresh cigarette butts near the fence line. He didn't show them to her, but she saw the way his eyes moved toward the hills. "He's close, isn't he?" she asked. "I think he never left," Jack said. She nodded slowly. Fear was still there, but it wasn't in charge anymore. The next morning, she surprised him. "Can you teach me to shoot?" Jack studied her for a long moment. He saw fear, yes, but he also saw something else. Resolve. He didn't answer. He went to the shed and came back with a worn rifle and a box of shells. "Set cans along the fence. Start slow," he said. Her first shot missed wide. The second wasn't much better. She laughed under her breath, almost embarrassed. By the 7th shot, the can jumped clean off the rail. Jack nodded. "That'll do." She didn't smile, but her eyes were different. That night, they sat by the fire. Beans boiled too long. Stars stretched wide overhead. Emily spoke again, more than before, about how the town looked away, about how Bill always knew who would stay quiet. "If he comes back," she said, voice low, "I won't be tied up again." Jack stirred the fire. "Good," he said. Just before sunrise, the bell at the gate rang once. Soft. Jack didn't move. Neither did Emily. They looked at each other, both knowing this moment had been walking toward them since the barn door first opened. Outside the fence, dust rose slow. Too slow for travelers. Jack reached for the rifle. Emily stood beside him, and as the sound of approaching hooves crept closer, one thought pressed hard into Jack's chest. The barn was never meant to be the end of her story. The bell rang again just before sunset. Not loud, not rushed, just enough to say someone wanted to be noticed. Jack Miller stood on the porch with a rifle resting against his leg, eyes fixed on the slow roll of dust rising beyond the fence. Emily Carter stood a step behind him, wrapped in a jacket that was still too big, her hands calm at her sides. Her calm surprised her more than anything else. 3 riders came into view. 2 stayed back. 1 moved ahead like the land already belonged to him. Emily didn't need the names spoken. Her chest tightened anyway. Bill Turner rode the way he always had, loose in the saddle, sure of himself, smiling like the world had never told him no. He looked older, heavier, but the smile was the same, the kind that treated people like things. Jack stepped off the porch and planted his boots in the dirt. Not threatening, not welcoming, just present. "Didn't think anyone was home," Bill called out, voice easy. Jack waited a beat. "You're standing on my land." Bill laughed, short and amused. "Funny thing about land," he said. "Paper decides who owns it." Emily felt her stomach twist. She'd heard those words before. He always spoke like life was a receipt he kept folded in his pocket. Jack nodded once. Funny thing about paper, he said. It burns. The two men behind Bill shifted in their saddles. One spat. The other glanced toward the barn without thinking. Emily noticed. That was when something settled heavy and clear in her chest. They knew. Bill's eyes slid past Jack and landed on her. The smile thinned. Well, he said, you're tougher than you look. Emily stepped forward before Jack could stop her. Her voice came out quiet, but it didn't shake. You left me there. Bill shrugged. Didn't see the need to check. Something in Jack went still. Not anger. Certainty. One of the men reached for his gun. Careless. Not fast. Jack fired first. The sound cracked across the land sharp and final. The man dropped hard and didn't move. Emily raised the rifle Jack had given her. Her hand stayed steady, even though her stomach flipped. She fired. The second man went down yelling, grabbing his leg, crawling for cover. Bill dove from his horse, rolling toward the corral, firing wild shots that hit fence posts and dirt. Wood splintered. Dust jumped around Jack's boots. Jack moved slow and steady, not chasing, not panicking. Emily circled wide like he'd taught her. Fear was there, loud and hot, but it wasn't driving. She saw Bill try to run. He always ran. She tackled him near the barn door. The same door. They hit the ground hard. He grabbed at her jacket, her hair, anything he could reach. You think this changes anything? He snarled. It already has, she said. Jack was there in seconds. He hauled Bill up by the collar and held him still. Bill's eyes flicked toward the barn, uncertainty flashing for the first time. You left her to disappear, Jack said. That was your mistake. Bill started begging then, promising, blaming everyone but himself. Jack didn't hit him, didn't shout. He just listened. They didn't kill Bill Turner. They did something worse. They tied him to a mule with a sign hanging from his neck. No drama. No poetry. The words were plain and true. I left a woman to die in a barn. They rode him through town slow enough for every porch and every window to see. No one laughed. No one looked away. When it was done, the ranch went quiet again. But it wasn't the kind of quiet that crawled under your skin. Later, Emily sat on the porch holding a cup of tea Jack had burned. She smiled anyway. Guess we're even now, she said. Jack shook his head, a small sound of disbelief in his chest. Not even close. Days passed. Fences were mended. The barn door stayed open. Emily still had nights where her body remembered before her mind did. Jack still woke early, checking things that didn't need checking. Healing didn't arrive all at once. One evening, Emily asked, You think places remember what happened to them? Jack thought about the barn, the war, all the things he'd tried to bury. I think people do, he said. And most times, that's enough. The wind moved through the land, softer now. And for the first time since the barn, Emily believed it. The quiet didn't last the way peace never does. It settled in gentle at first, almost polite like it was asking permission. Emily noticed it before Jack did. She noticed everything now. The way Jack checked the gate twice instead of once. The way he paused before stepping outside, listening to the hills like they might answer back. The way his coffee went cold in his hand because his eyes kept drifting past the fence line. 2 days after Bill Turner was gone, Emily found the note. It was nailed to the gate with a rusted tack, paper already curling at the edges. Red paint. No greeting. No name. Just a sentence written by someone who wanted it read slow. I'm coming back for what's mine. Emily didn't blink when she read it. Her fingers tightened around the paper, but her breathing stayed even. When Jack saw it, he didn't curse. He didn't tear it down. He folded it once and slid it into his coat pocket, like pretending it didn't exist would give it less weight. That night, neither of them slept much. On the third morning, another message came. This one wasn't nailed. It was tucked into the fence post like it belonged there. Plain envelope. No return mark. Jack held it longer than he should have before opening it. Emily was inside making biscuits, the smell warm enough to almost feel normal. Almost. Inside the envelope were 4 words. I remember Tombstone. Jack's mouth went dry. Not from fear. From memory. He folded the letter slow and placed it beside the first note in his pocket. Then he stood there in the yard, still as a man, trying to hear something that wasn't wind. Emily stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on a towel. You get mail out here? She asked, trying to sound light. Not the kind you want. Jack said without looking at her. She didn't let it drop. Whose tombstone? Jack finally turned toward her. He could have lied. He didn't. That mattered. Old mistake, he said. Emily studied his face, the same way he'd studied the land when she first arrived. She didn't push. She didn't step back either. She had learned something important about herself. She could stand still when things got heavy. That afternoon, Jack worked harder than he needed to. Fixed boards that weren't broken. Moved tools already put away. Emily watched him for a while, then went back inside. She knew what it felt like when your thoughts wouldn't leave you alone. When night came, Jack didn't light the porch lamp. He didn't like being seen. Emily noticed and brought 2 cups of tea outside anyway. She set one near his knee. "You don't have to tell me," she said. "But don't shut me out." Jack stared into the dark. The land looked calm, but calm was never a promise. "Before the war," he said finally, "I ran with men I shouldn't have." His voice stayed low, like he didn't want the ranch hearing it. Emily didn't interrupt. "Tombstone," he continued. "That place gets into your bones. One job went bad. Fire spread. Shots fired. A kid got hit. A woman didn't make it out." Emily's fingers tightened around her cup. "I didn't pull the trigger," Jack said, "but I didn't stop it either." The wind moved through the grass. Somewhere far off, a coyote called and went quiet again. "The man who sent that letter," Emily said carefully, "he was there." Jack nodded. "Roy." He didn't say the rest. He didn't need to. "So he's not here for the land," Emily said. "No," Jack replied. "He's here for the story. Men like him need endings." Emily set her cup down. "Then we don't give him one." Jack almost smiled. The next morning, Jack saddled the horse before the sun cleared the ridge. Emily stepped onto the porch, blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Checking the east fence," he said. She gave him a look that said she knew better. "Don't be stupid." "That's the nicest thing you've said to me all week," he answered. Halfway down the ridge trail, Jack saw the fire. Small, controlled, the kind meant to be noticed. He dismounted and walked forward slow. His rifle stayed low. "You still wear the same boots, Miller," a voice said from the dark. Roy stepped into the firelight like he'd been invited. Older, rougher, smiling the way men do when pain has always worked in their favor. "I'm not here to shoot you," Roy said. "I'm here to remind you." Jack held his ground. "Of what?" "Tombstone," Roy said. "Of what you let happen." Roy's eyes drifted toward the ranch. "Nice place. Quiet. And that girl, she matters to you." That was the real threat. "I'm not that man anymore," Jack said. Roy laughed. "That's cute." Jack could have ended it there. One shot, one ghost gone, but he didn't raise the rifle. He stepped back. "I'm going home," Jack said. Roy's smile flickered. "This ain't over." Jack rode back hard. When he reached the porch, Emily was already waiting. He didn't lie. "He's real," Jack said, "and he knows about you." Emily's eyes sharpened. "Then tell me," she said, "what did you do in Tombstone that makes a man like that come looking?" The ranch felt sharper after that. Not heavier. Honest. The truth changed the air on the ranch. Not thicker. Clearer. Like a storm had passed through and stripped away whatever could still pretend. Emily didn't press Jack for details right away. She didn't need them yet. She heard enough in his voice, the way someone hears a crack in old wood and knows it will split when the wind comes back. That night, neither of them slept much. Jack kept the lamp low on the porch, rifle within reach. Emily sat at the table inside, cleaning the rifle slow and careful. Not because she loved guns, because preparation quieted the noise in her head. They weren't hiding. They were getting ready. Morning came bright and wrong. The kind of morning that fooled people into thinking trouble took days off. Jack poured coffee and slid a cup toward Emily. "You don't have to stay," he said. "You can head into town. Take a train east." Emily looked at him like he'd asked her to forget her own name. "I already ran once," she said. "I'm done with that." Jack nodded. He had hoped she'd say it. He had also been afraid she would. They spent the day doing ordinary things on purpose. Mending a hinge. Feeding the horse twice. Fixing a fence post that leaned but hadn't fallen yet. Normal work steadied the hands when the mind wanted to spiral. Around noon, Jack finally talked about Tombstone. Not every detail, just enough. A robbery. Fire spreading fast. Shots fired in panic. A child caught in the wrong place. A woman trapped where no one reached her in time. I watched, Jack said. That's the part that never let me sleep. Emily stood still. I know what that feels like, she said. That was all. It was enough. By late afternoon, the horse started acting wrong again. Ears twitching, muscles tight. Then Jack saw the dust. One rider. Not Bill. Not Roy. A stranger. The man stopped at the gate and tipped his hat like manners still meant something. Evening, he called. That depends, Jack said. Just passing word, the man replied. Some folks are asking about this place. Jack's grip tightened. What folks? The man shrugged. Men who don't like loose ends. He turned and rode off without waiting. Emily exhaled. So it started. It already did, Jack said. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Not from fear. From thinking. She stepped onto the porch where Jack sat sharpening a blade. You ever think about leaving again? She asked. Every man does, Jack said. Then he decides when leaving costs more than staying. Emily sat beside him. Then we stay. Jack looked at her and nodded. The next morning, the sheriff rode in just after breakfast. Hat low, eyes tired. Heard about Bill Turner, he said. Jack didn't deny it. Some folks think you went too far. Emily stepped forward. Some folks think wrong. The sheriff studied her, then sighed. Off the record, he said. A man like Roy asking questions means this won't end clean. Jack nodded. I'm counting on that. The sheriff left without writing anything down. That evening, Jack set the lanterns just right. Not bright, not hidden. Emily noticed a crow land on the same fence post twice, watching like it was waiting for a signal. Then it flew off fast. As darkness settled, boots sounded slow across the yard. Jack stood. Emily joined him at the edge of the light. Evening, Miller, Roy said, stepping forward alone. Hands visible. Smile easy. No guns tonight, Roy added. Just talk. You always like talks that end your way, Jack said. Roy laughed softly. I like endings. He glanced at Emily. You must be why he's grown a spine. No, Emily said calmly. I'm why he remembers who he is. Roy's smile thinned. Sleep light, he said. Tomorrow gets interesting. Then he vanished into the dark. The ranch went quiet again. Too quiet. They're testing us, Jack said. Emily nodded. Then tomorrow, we stop being tested. As the night deepened, one thought settled between them, heavy and clear. When the sun came up, would Roy make Jack bleed for Tombstone? Or would Jack do the one thing that scared a predator more than a gun? Say next. Morning arrived without asking permission. No warning. No mercy. The sky was pale and honest, the kind that stripped excuses bare. Jack Miller stood on the porch before the sun cleared the ridge, coffee cooling in his hands, eyes locked on land that had already demanded more from him than he ever planned to give. Emily Carter joined him quietly. She didn't say good morning. Some mornings carried too much weight for small talk. They both knew Roy hadn't come to talk last night. He'd come to measure, to see if Jack was still the man who froze in Tombstone, to see if Emily was still the woman who could be left in a barn and erased. He was wrong about both of us, Jack said finally. Emily nodded. She already knew. I'm not ending this with a gun, Jack said. He said like a decision, not a hope. Emily didn't argue. Violence closes doors, she said. Choice opens them. Jack saddled the horse anyway. Not to run, to ride straight at what he'd avoided for decades. Emily stood at the gate, arms wrapped around herself against the morning chill. You come back, she said. Jack smiled. Not big. Real. I will. He rode toward the ridge where the land flattened and the wind always changed first. Roy was already there, leaning against a rock, hands empty, confidence loud, even in silence. Took you long enough? Roy said. Jack dismounted and stood across from him. No rifle raised. No knife drawn. Just a man choosing where to stand. You came for an ending, Jack said. Roy laughed. I came for the truth. Jack nodded. Then listen. He talked about the war. About Maggie. About nights waking up tasting smoke and guilt. About Tombstone. About standing still when he should have moved. About how doing nothing had followed him longer than any bullet ever could. Roy listened. The smile faded inch by inch. I won't run anymore, Jack said. I won't pretend. And I won't give you the power you think you still have. Roy stepped closer. You think saying it fixes it? No, Jack said, but choosing who I am now does. The wind moved between them. Quiet, waiting. For a moment, it felt like the whole desert leaned in to listen. Roy looked past Jack toward the ranch, toward the gate where Emily stood small but unmovable. You've got something to lose now. Jack nodded. That's the point. Roy searched his face for the man who used to flinch. He didn't find him. Finally, Roy stepped back. Walking away doesn't erase the past, he said. No, Jack replied, but it stops it from owning tomorrow. Roy turned and walked off. No gunshot followed. No chase. Just dust, distance, and a choice made clean. Jack rode back as the sun climbed higher. Emily was still at the gate. She didn't ask what happened. She saw it in his shoulders, in his breathing. It's done, Jack said. Emily smiled. Not loud. Real. Life didn't turn perfect after that. Healing never did. Emily still had nights when the barn came back in pieces. Jack still woke early, checking fences that didn't need checking. But the ranch no longer felt like a place to hide. It felt like a place to live. They didn't talk much about what happened after that. Some things didn't need to be replayed to be real. Days kept moving the way days always did. Slow, steady, sometimes heavy for no clear reason. Jack fixed fences that leaned. Emily learned which parts of the land held water after rain. They planted a small garden, not because they needed it, but because staying meant believing there would be a tomorrow worth tending. Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces. Emily still woke some nights with her heart racing, hands gripping air like rope was still there. When that happened, she didn't scream. She sat up, breathed, reminded herself where she was. Sometimes Jack was awake already, sitting on the porch, listening to the dark. They didn't always speak. They didn't have to. Jack still carried Tombstone with him. Some mornings the weight showed in his eyes, but he didn't hide from it anymore. He faced it the way you face a scar, not proud, not ashamed, just honest about how it got there. One evening, as the sky turned soft and gold, Emily broke the quiet. You ever think you're too old to start over? Jack smiled into his cup. Starting over isn't being new, he said. It's choosing who you are with everything you carry. Emily nodded. That made sense. She'd learned something important in that barn and everything after it. What was done to her didn't disappear, but it didn't get to decide the rest of her life either. Silence had almost erased her once. Choice brought her back. The ranch held its quiet better now. Not the kind that swallowed you. The kind that let you breathe. The barn doors stayed open, not because they forgot what happened there, but because closing them forever would have meant fear still had a vote. If there was a lesson in all of it, it wasn't about guns or land or revenge. It was about standing still when running felt easier, about facing what followed you instead of letting it hunt you. Jack didn't fix the past. Emily didn't erase her pain. They chose something harder. They chose to stay. And sometimes that choice, made over and over in small, ordinary moments, was the most honest kind of freedom a person could have.